The moment I opened that gift on Christmas morning, I knew my marriage was over. But what my husband and his family didn't know was that I had something in my pocket that would destroy them all. Picture this. Christmas morning, 2023. I'm sitting in my mother-in-law's mansion, surrounded by perfectly wrapped presents under a 12-foot Christmas tree. Everything looks like a holiday movie. The twinkling lights, the expensive decorations, the family gathered around in their designer pajamas. But what happened next was anything but picture perfect. My name is Sarah, and I'm about to tell you how one cruel joke gift became the catalyst for the most satisfying revenge I've ever witnessed. Because sometimes when people think they have all the power, they forget that their victims might be quietly gathering ammunition. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly what I mean by that. But before I tell you about the nuclear bomb I dropped on my toxic in-laws that Christmas morning, let me take you back 3 weeks earlier, when I first started planning their destruction. My life looked perfect from the outside. I was 34, successful, and married to Mark, a lawyer from one of the wealthiest families in our city. We lived in a beautiful home that my marketing agency had paid for, and everyone thought I was living the dream. But behind closed doors, my life had become a nightmare. For 3 years, Mark and I had been trying to have a baby. 3 years of fertility treatments, failed IVF attempts, and mounting medical bills. And yes, I say my medical bills because despite what everyone assumed, I was the one paying for everything. My marketing business that I'd built from nothing was generating serious money, way more than Mark's salary at his family's old money law firm. But here's what made everything worse. Instead of supporting me through our fertility struggles, Mark's family had turned it into their personal entertainment. Linda, my mother-in-law, was a 60-year-old widow who had never worked a day in her life, but somehow felt qualified to judge every aspect of mine. She'd make little comments like, well, maybe if Sarah focused less on her little business and more on being a wife. Or some women just aren't built for motherhood, dear. Then there was Kevin, Mark's 32-year-old brother who still lived off the family money and spent his days making crude jokes about my broken parts and asking Mark if he'd tested the merchandise properly before buying. And Mark, the man I'd married, who'd promised to love and support me through everything, he'd started joining in. At first, it was just uncomfortable silence when his family made their cruel comments. But lately he'd been actively participating, making jokes about our bedroom life and calling our fertility treatments Sarah's expensive hobby. I should have seen the red flags earlier, like how Linda would always find reasons to exclude me from family decisions, or how Mark had become increasingly secretive about money, claiming we needed to be more careful with spending while his unemployed brother somehow afforded designer clothes and expensive vacations. But the biggest red flag? The way they'd all go silent when I walked into a room, like they'd been talking about me. And the way Mark had started working late every night, coming home smelling like expensive perfume that definitely wasn't mine. My best friend Jessica had been warning me for months. Sarah, she'd say, something isn't right with that family. The way they treat you, it's not normal. But I kept making excuses. I kept hoping things would get better once we finally had a baby. What I didn't know was that while I was desperately trying to save my marriage and start a family, they were actively working to destroy me. The breaking point came 3 weeks before Christmas, when Jessica showed up at my office with something that would change everything. Sarah, she said, closing the door behind her. I need to show you something, and you're not going to like it. She handed me her phone, and on the screen was a photo that made my blood run cold. It was Mark, but he wasn't alone. He was kissing a woman I recognized, Rebecca, a paralegal from his firm. They were coming out of the Ritz-Carlton downtown, and from the timestamp, I could see it was taken the same night Mark had told me he was working late on a big case. There's more, Jessica said quietly. And there was. Photos spanning months, showing Mark and this woman together at restaurants, hotels, even apartment hunting. While I was pumping myself full of hormones and enduring painful procedures to try to give him the family he claimed to want, he was building a new life with someone else. But here's the thing that broke me completely. In one of the photos, I could see Mark showing Rebecca something on his phone, and they were both laughing hysterically. Later, Jessica would tell me she'd overheard Rebecca at a coffee shop, telling her friends about Mark's crazy wife who's obsessed with getting pregnant. and how Mark had been sharing intimate details about our struggles, our fights, even our most private moments. That's when I realized this wasn't just about an affair. This was about systematic humiliation and betrayal by people I'd trusted with my most vulnerable moments. So I made a decision that would change everything. I hired a private investigator. David Chun was a former police detective who specialized in marital fraud cases. Within a week, he'd uncovered more betrayal than I'd ever imagined possible. First, the affair. It had been going on for 8 months. Coincidentally, right around the time Mark had become most vicious about our fertility treatments. The detective found hotel receipts, restaurant charges, even apartment applications. All paid for with money from our joint accounts, money I'd earned working 16-hour days to build my business. But the affair was just the beginning. David discovered that Mark had been systematically moving our assets into accounts controlled by his mother. Over the past year, nearly $200,000 had been transferred out of our joint accounts and into trusts that Linda managed. Money that was supposed to be for our future, for our children, for our life together. Then there was the business sabotage. Linda had been calling my clients, pretending to be concerned about my emotional stability, and suggesting they might want to consider other options. 3 of my biggest accounts had already started asking questions about my reliability, and I'd been wondering why my business was suddenly struggling after years of growth. But the discovery that made my hands shake was the life insurance policy. Mark had taken out a policy on me for $2 million, and had increased it significantly right after our fertility struggles began. When David showed me the paperwork, I noticed something chilling. The beneficiary wasn't just Mark. It was Mark and Linda jointly. "Sarah," David said during our final meeting, "I've seen a lot of bad marriages, but this is something else. They're not just planning to leave you. They're planning to destroy you completely." He was right. I found evidence of Mark consulting divorce lawyers, planning to claim that my business success was actually due to his family's connections, and preparing to paint me as an unstable woman obsessed with having children. The plan was to leave me with nothing while they kept everything I'd worked for. But here's what Mark and his family didn't know. While they were planning my destruction, I was planning theirs. I met with Maria Santos, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. I moved my personal assets into protected accounts. I gathered evidence of every cruel comment, every financial betrayal, every moment of psychological abuse. And I waited for the perfect moment to reveal everything. That moment would come on Christmas morning, in front of the entire family, when they handed me what they thought would be the final humiliation. They had no idea they were about to hand me the greatest gift of my life, my freedom. Christmas morning at Linda's mansion was a production, as always. Everyone gathered in the formal living room, wearing matching silk pajamas that Linda had bought for everyone except me. I got the message. The tree was enormous, covered in designer ornaments, and underneath were piles of expensive gifts wrapped in gold paper. I'd brought thoughtful, expensive presents for everyone, still trying to buy their acceptance even though I knew it was hopeless. Mark got a vintage watch he'd been wanting. Linda got a cashmere shawl from Italy. Kevin got high-end golf accessories. I'd spent thousands, hoping that maybe this year would be different. But as we opened gifts, I noticed Mark and Linda exchanging looks. Little smiles. Secret glances. Kevin kept snickering like he was in on some private joke. And then, when all the other presents were opened, Mark stood up dramatically. "Wait," he said, grinning in a way that made my stomach drop. "We have one more special gift for Sarah. Something we think she really needs." He handed me a small box wrapped in silver paper with a big red bow. The entire family was watching me with anticipation, like they were about to witness something hilarious. I opened it slowly, and inside was a positive pregnancy test. Not a new one. A used one, clearly fake, sitting in tissue paper. Attached was a note written in Linda's distinctive handwriting. "Maybe if you try harder, this will be yours someday. From your loving family, who just wants what's best. XOXO. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then Kevin burst into laughter. "Oh my God, the look on her face," he wheezed. Linda was smirking with satisfaction. "We just thought you might need some inspiration, dear. You know, something to motivate you." Mark was trying to play it off as harmless. Come on, Sarah, it's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive. But this wasn't a spontaneous moment of cruelty. This was planned. Calculated. They had sat around and planned this moment of maximum humiliation, probably for weeks. That's when Rebecca walked in. "Sorry I'm late," she called out cheerfully, carrying a bottle of expensive wine. "Linda invited me for Christmas dinner." And suddenly, everything clicked into place. This wasn't just about humiliating me with a cruel joke. They'd planned to parade Mark's affair partner in front of me, on Christmas morning, after destroying me with their gift. They wanted to show me exactly how replaceable I was, how little I mattered, how completely they'd won. Rebecca looked confused by the tension in the room, but Linda quickly guided her to the couch. "Rebecca, dear, we were just giving Sarah a little Christmas surprise." That's when I felt the envelope in my pocket. The thick manila envelope containing 3 weeks of investigation, evidence of their betrayal, proof of their cruelty, and the legal documents that would destroy their lives. And I smiled. "You know what?" I said, standing up slowly. "Before Rebecca gets too comfortable, I think there are some things everyone should know about this family." Mark's face went white. Linda started to object, but I was already pulling out the envelope. "Please," I continued, my voice deadly calm. "Don't let me interrupt the festivities. I have some Christmas gifts of my own to share." I set the thick manila envelope on the coffee table like evidence in a courtroom. The room went completely silent. "Mark," I said, still smiling, "since you enjoy sharing intimate details about our marriage so much, I thought everyone might be interested in some details about yours." I pulled out the first set of photos and placed them face up on the table. Mark and Rebecca, kissing outside the Ritz-Carlton. Mark and Rebecca apartment hunting. Mark and Rebecca at romantic dinners paid for with our joint credit card. Rebecca's face went from confusion to horror. "Mark, what is this? You told me you were divorced." 8 months. I continued conversationally. "That's how long this has been going on. 8 months of Mark telling you that I was crazy, obsessed, mentally unstable. 8 months of him sharing our most private struggles, so you could both have a good laugh." Mark was trying to speak, but I wasn't finished. "Rebecca, did he tell you that he paid for your hotel rooms with money meant for my fertility treatments? Did he mention that while I was pumping myself full of hormones and enduring painful procedures, he was telling you I was just a crazy ex who wouldn't leave him alone?" I pulled out printed screenshots of text messages between Mark and Rebecca. Messages where he called me pathetic and desperate. Messages where he mocked my hope of having children. Messages where he detailed our most intimate moments for her entertainment. Rebecca stood up, disgusted. "Mark, is this true? You're still married? You told me she was your ex-wife who was stalking you." But I wasn't done with Mark yet. I turned to Linda. "And you," I said, pulling out bank statements. "Let's talk about the money you've been helping steal from our joint accounts." The color drained from Linda's face as I spread the financial records across the table. $200,000, transferred out of accounts that I had funded with my business success. Turns out, Linda, when you help someone commit financial fraud, there's a paper trail. Every transfer, every hidden account, every dollar you thought you were cleverly moving around. I pulled out more documents. And these are the recordings of you calling my clients, trying to destroy my business. Did you really think I wouldn't figure out why my accounts were suddenly concerned about my emotional stability? Linda was sputtering, trying to deny everything, but I had recordings. Actual audio of her calling my biggest client, and suggesting they might want to reconsider working with someone going through such personal struggles. Kevin, who'd been so brave when he was making jokes about my fertility, was now trying to sink into the couch cushions. "Kevin," I said sweetly, "I'm sure you'll be interested to know that the money funding your lifestyle, the designer clothes, the vacations, the car payments, that's all been coming from accounts I funded. You've been living off my success while mocking my failures." But the piece of evidence that made Mark go completely pale was the life insurance policy. $2 million, I said, holding up the paperwork. "That's how much you thought I was worth dead, Mark. And interesting that you made your mother a joint beneficiary. Almost like you were planning for something to happen to me." The room was dead silent except for Rebecca gathering her purse. "I can't believe this," she said to Mark. You're not just married, you're a fraud. And you've been using me to torture your wife. She looked at me with genuine remorse. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out my phone and opened a video call. I'd like everyone to meet Maria Santos, I said as my divorce attorney appeared on screen. Maria, can you tell everyone what happens when someone commits financial fraud during a marriage? Maria's voice filled the room. Good morning. Sarah has provided extensive evidence of asset hiding, business interference, and emotional abuse. Mark, you're looking at criminal charges for financial fraud, and Linda, as an accessory, you're facing serious legal consequences as well. Mark finally found his voice. Sarah, you're having a breakdown. This is insane behavior. Insane. I laughed, and it was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. Let me tell you what's insane, Mark. What's insane is that you thought I was stupid enough to let you destroy me. What's insane is that you underestimated the woman who built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing. I stood up, gathering my evidence. The divorce papers are being filed tomorrow. The fraud investigation starts next week. And Mark. I turned to face him directly. That cruel joke gift you gave me? It actually revealed the truth about all of you. You showed me exactly who you are, and now everyone gets to see it too. I walked toward the door, then turned back one final time. Oh, and Mark? That positive pregnancy test in your cruel gift? It's actually mine. I found out 3 days ago. But don't worry. You'll never have to be inconvenienced by being a father. This child will be raised by someone who actually knows how to love unconditionally. And with that, I walked out of that mansion and into my new life. The week after Christmas was like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. Maria Santos wasn't kidding about the legal consequences. Mark was facing disbarment proceedings for the financial fraud, which meant his career was over. The law firm that had been in his family for 3 generations, they quietly asked him to take a leave of absence that everyone knew would be permanent. Linda discovered that when you're under investigation for financial fraud, your assets get frozen. The mansion, the trust funds, the carefully managed wealth she'd been so proud of, all tied up in legal proceedings. She had to let go of her household staff and cancel her membership at the country club where she'd spent decades looking down on people like me. Kevin got the biggest reality check of all. Without access to the family money, he had to get his first real job at 32 years old. Last I heard, he was working at a car dealership and living in a studio apartment. But the most satisfying part wasn't watching them lose their money and status. It was watching them lose each other. Linda blamed Mark for being careless enough to get caught. Mark blamed Linda for pushing too hard and making me suspicious. Kevin blamed both of them for cutting off his lifestyle. The family that had been so united in their cruelty toward me completely turned on each other the moment their scheme fell apart. Rebecca, to her credit, actually called me a few days after Christmas to apologize and offer additional evidence. It turned out Mark had been lying to her about more than just our marriage. He'd told her he was independently wealthy, that his family owned multiple businesses, that he was going to support her while she went back to school. When she learned the truth, that I was the one with money and success, she was horrified at how she'd been used. Sarah, she said during that phone call, I am so deeply sorry. I genuinely thought you were his ex-wife who was causing problems. He painted you as this unstable, obsessive person, and I believed him. If I'd known the truth. Rebecca, I interrupted. You were manipulated too. He's very good at making people believe what serves his purpose. She ended up providing text messages and emails that further proved Mark's deception and helped my attorney build an even stronger case. Meanwhile, my business was thriving again. Once my clients learned the truth about Linda's interference campaign, not only did they come back, but they started referring new business to me. Turns out, people don't like being manipulated by bitter mother-in-laws any more than wives do. 6 months later, I was sitting in the living room of my new house, a beautiful place I'd bought with my own money, in my name only, watching my belly grow with the child I'd dreamed of for so long. But the most amazing part wasn't finally being pregnant. It was how different this pregnancy felt compared to all those failed attempts when I was with Mark. There was no stress, no pressure, No one making cruel jokes about my body or my hopes. Just peace, excitement, and the knowledge that I was bringing a child into a world of love and support. Jessica came over almost every day, helping me prepare the nursery and marveling at how different I looked. "Sarah," she said one afternoon, "you're literally glowing. It's like you're a completely different person." She was right. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. I was sleeping through the night. I was laughing, really laughing, at things that were actually funny. I was excited about the future instead of dreading each day. My parents flew in from across the country when they learned about the pregnancy and the divorce. My mother cried when she saw me. "Oh honey," she said. "I didn't realize how much weight you'd lost, how tired you looked. You look like our Sarah again." It was true. I hadn't realized how much the emotional abuse had changed me physically. In photos from the past year, I looked gaunt and exhausted. Now even pregnant, I looked healthier and happier than I had in years. The therapy helped too. Dr. Williams specialized in emotional abuse recovery, and she helped me understand how systematically Mark and his family had been undermining my self-worth. "What they did to you," she explained, was a textbook example of psychological warfare. They identified your deepest insecurity, your fertility struggles, and weaponized it against you. They isolated you from support systems, made you doubt your own perceptions, and convinced you that you deserved their treatment. Learning about gaslighting, financial abuse, and emotional manipulation helped me understand that none of their behavior had been my fault. I hadn't been too sensitive or unable to take a joke. I'd been the target of deliberate cruelty from people who were supposed to love and protect me. But the most healing part was planning for my child's future. This baby would never know the toxic dynamics I'd endured. They would grow up in a home where love wasn't conditional, where mistakes weren't ammunition for cruelty, where vulnerability was met with support instead of mockery. By the time Christmas rolled around again, almost exactly 1 year after that devastating morning, my life looked completely different. I was 8 months pregnant, glowing with health and happiness. My business was more successful than ever. I'd moved into a house that felt like a real home, decorated with warmth and love instead of cold perfection. And most importantly, I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. Jessica was there, of course, helping me put the finishing touches on the nursery. My parents had moved closer to help with the baby. I'd even started dating someone new, Michael, a pediatrician I'd met at a childbirth class who treated me like I was precious instead of disposable. The legal battles had finally wrapped up. Mark had been disbarred and was working at a small firm across town, making a fraction of his previous salary. He was living in a studio apartment and driving a used car. Linda had lost the mansion and most of her assets to legal fees and restitution. She was living in a small condo and had become a social outcast in her former circle. Kevin was still working at the car dealership, finally learning what it meant to earn his own way in the world. But here's what surprised me the most. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt grateful. That cruel Christmas morning had been the wake-up call I needed. If they hadn't pushed their cruelty to such an extreme, I might have stayed trapped in that toxic marriage for years. I might have continued trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it. I might have raised my child in that environment of conditional affection and casual cruelty. Instead, their attempt to break me had set me free. As I sat in my nursery on Christmas Eve, putting together the last few baby items, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, desperate for approval, willing to accept crumbs of affection, convinced that I had to earn love through perfect behavior and endless forgiveness. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely happier. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Can't wait to spend tomorrow with you and our little one. You've made this the best Christmas of my life." Our little one. He'd been calling the baby that since we'd started dating, never making me feel like damaged goods or a package deal. He was excited about becoming a stepfather, about building a family with me, about giving this child the loving father figure I'd always dreamed of. I placed my hand on my belly and felt the baby kick, as if responding to the love and warmth surrounding us. "You're going to have such a different life than I did," I whispered. "You're going to grow up knowing exactly how loved and wanted you are." A year later, As I sit here holding my beautiful 6-month-old daughter, I can honestly say that Christmas morning was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because the cruelty felt good, it was devastating in the moment, but because it forced me to see the truth about people I'd been making excuses for, and more importantly, it forced me to see the truth about myself. I was stronger than I knew. I was smarter than they gave me credit for. I was worthy of real love, not the conditional scraps they'd been feeding me. Their joke gift had been meant to break me, but instead it revealed something they never expected. That the quiet, desperate woman they'd been tormenting was actually a force to be reckoned with when pushed too far. If you're watching this video and recognizing your own situation in my story, please know this. You deserve better. You deserve love that doesn't come with conditions. You deserve support during your struggles, not cruelty. You deserve financial security, not manipulation and theft. And if someone in your life is systematically undermining your self-worth, isolating you from support, or using your vulnerabilities against you, please know that it's not normal. It's not something you have to accept. It's not your fault. Document everything. Protect your assets. Find people who will support you. And remember that sometimes the people who try to break you end up freeing you to become who you were always meant to be. My daughter will never know the fear, desperation, and self-doubt that define my life with Mark's family. She'll grow up confident, supported, and loved unconditionally. She'll never have to earn affection through perfect behavior, or accept cruelty disguised as jokes. And every time I look at her perfect little face, I'm reminded that the worst betrayal of my life led to the greatest gift I could ever receive. My freedom, my strength, and the family I've built from love instead of obligation. That manila envelope I pulled from my pocket on Christmas morning didn't just contain evidence of their betrayal. It contained my ticket to a life where I'm valued, respected, and genuinely loved. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Kevin. Your cruelty set me free, and I couldn't be more grateful. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's living so well without them that they become completely irrelevant to your happiness. And trust me, that's exactly what happened. If you enjoyed this story of justice and transformation, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment that seemed devastating but ended up being the best thing that ever happened to you? I'd love to hear your stories of turning betrayal into triumph. Until next time, remember, you are stronger than you know, and you deserve so much better than settling for people who don't see your worth.